Well, hi.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Really well. It's so good to see you. It's been like literally years.
Yeah, yeah, I was just thinking that. It's like how it couldn't have been. Oh,
How can we live like not that far apart but not see each other in
yeah, we
years?
really don't.
Actually, that's
I don't think there's a good excuse besides COVID. But
well,
like pre-COVID, there wasn't a good excuse.
well, the pandemic has basically been here for nearly 2 years now. So,
True, true.
mm, anyway,
Yeah.
welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. You're an actor making it, so you fit the criteria of a podcast guest.
Good to know. I'm also very distracted by the dog in the background.
Okay, yeah. He keeps wandering around and his little claws like all over the wooden flooring isn't great for a podcast that I'm
Yeah,
recording in the room.
yeah.
And he and so I've literally been screaming out for the last 5 minutes, get on the sofa, get on the sofa.
I do remember being at your house shooting a self-tape and hearing the dad voice come out.
Yeah,
And I'm like, oh my gosh.
he does get it regularly. Um, but this is my new home. For those of you that watch YouTube regularly, this is my new apartment. It does look like I have horns at the moment with this
Yeah,
beautiful artwork behind my head.
just embrace it.
I embrace the horn all the time.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Let's start again. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, okay, so let's get right into it. I mean, we've started off talking about pandemic. How is how has that all been for you with acting and work and
Yeah, it's been interesting. I think I've like most of the acting has happened in those little tiny spaces between lockdowns
yeah,
we've been getting.
yeah,
So I did end up shooting a short film earlier in the year. So 7 stages. That was a friend had written, directed, but I was like production managing and helping to produce it, which was good. But that was kind of a trial by fire in terms of production managing because we thought we'd chosen a good time to do it. We were like, yep, there's no lockdown. We haven't had any COVID cases for ages. Let's do it over the new year. And then we got shut down halfway through because someone had been to a hotspot and we like found out. So we had to like shut down filming for a few days while people got tested. And then we were running around trying to like get our locations sorted for another day. But yeah, it turns out well. So there's that. It did end up happening. So yeah, since then it's kind of been that feeling, well, if I can do it then, once COVID's over, it should be smooth sailing.
yeah.
Or at least that's what I'm telling myself. I don't think it's ever smooth sailing.
Well, I mean, smooth
Confusing.
sailing. Well, yeah, a smooth sailing as a film set can be.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, mostly I've actually been doing production stuff. Like there hasn't really been that much acting things coming my way like during COVID, besides the stuff we're writing ourselves. But yeah, so I started chaperoning, and production assisting, which was fun experience.
Yeah, sure. What does
Yeah.
that mean exactly, chaperoning?
Well, I was a child chaperone
Okay.
on a ABC series coming out later this year. I think I can mention it. Yeah, it's starting to be advertised. It's called Born to Spy. It's great. And it's probably not the best advertisement. Yeah, it's great. It actually is. It's a wonderful kids series.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are certain rules on a set in regards to children and how long they can work and when they have to have rest breaks
Right.
and all of that. So generally you'll have a child chaperone on those sets who is in charge of looking after the well-being of the kids.
Yeah, wow.
So kind of making sure that I know where they are at all times, that they're catching up on schoolwork if they need to, that they're getting the breaks that they need to. So yeah, it was it was a really good lesson in just seeing how a set works.
Yeah, sure. And was that your
because-
first time on like a, I don't know if using the word professional set is the right word, because no matter where we are, if we're filming, it's a professional set.
Yeah.
But
It was the
time on
first like
independent?
network television
Yes.
that I've been on. One of the yeah, I have been on a professional set as an actor before.
Okay.
So I did I had a really small part in a film coming out later this year, Love You Like That.
Okay.
So that was the role that I kind of had that experience where I was still full-time teaching at that time.
Yep.
And I don't know, I always say God has a good sense of humor, because it seems every time I've asked him for something, I'm like, okay, I didn't quite mean it like this, but all right, yep, get your point. So I was in that phase of wondering whether I should drop down from full-time teaching to casual.
Right.
And I was like, oh God, just give me a sign. I'm kind of feeling like I'm being pushed in this direction, but I don't know whether to make the leap. And then I got invited to a table read to be the reader or narrator for all the like big print, because someone I knew was in the cast. And from that, I got a very tiny role in this film. But the table read happened in school holidays on the Wednesday. And then on the Friday, they'd offered me the role and went, yeah, we'll need you to start filming on Monday, which was the first day of term. And my principal, who I had to ask for permission, was in Nepal on a like mission trip with the kids. So I was trying to like ring the school and see if I could get the time off, and they were wonderful and they managed it, but it was right during report time. And I had, I think, about 9 days in and out during the first few weeks of term. So I was like writing reports and marking and writing exams. Yeah. I was like, yep, cannot keep doing this if I'm gonna like step away and try and get more acting work or film work.
Sure.
I can't keep this up. It's exhausting. But well,
there's a couple
yeah,
of
so
oh, sorry.
Yeah, that was like sorry.
It's all right. Good old Zoom talking over each other. It's always fun.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was the first film set experience, and then this was the other one. And I think it's really interesting being part of a crew rather than an actor. Like, you still learnt a lot, and especially in that first role, because I don't think I have any lines. But I was reoccurring through several scenes that you could just sit back and watch without stressing about your lines coming up or knowing what the scene is and things. But yeah, like as a crew member, most of my job was just hanging around, making sure the kids were looked after, knowing where they were. So I spent a lot of time just standing next to the director and the DOP and all of those kind of people. So just kind of being a fly on the wall, being like, oh, okay, that's what they find annoying in an actor, or like that's that little thing that I wouldn't have thought would be an annoying thing for an actor to do. Like, yeah. Just things like that I think when you're in it, trying to learn lines, trying to do a job, you kind of don't realize.
Yeah, I can imagine being able to be on set in that capacity of being part of crew and being an actor would be incredibly rewarding from a learning perspective, and actually understanding how people work and how everything kind of comes together. Yeah, I think it is. And because I think sometimes as an actor, when you're focused on the performance, you get those moments of, oh, I'm trying to get into the scene and they're interrupting me, or it's taking forever to set up, or things like that, where it can be kind of, when you're in your own little bubble and you're like, I've got to get this performance out, it can be quite frustrating, or you find it hard and don't understand why. Yeah, those things are happening, where like being a part of the crew, it's like, well, yeah, no, that lighting did not look good. I can see why they're taking an extra 20 minutes now to relight everything, while the actors are trying to hold on to the energy that they just had. So it's like, I think it's that interesting perspective, I guess you'd say, of just being able to see both sides now, where I'm like, okay, yep. Yeah, wow. I can see what's happening. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's kind of also really cool, just to be able to, when you're not, I was going to say, when you're not working in a normal job. That's such a dumb thing to say, because obviously this is a job. In a traditional job, to be able to move into something like chaperoning and still being in and around sets and part of a production crew, etc. You're still in the industry, even though you're not actually acting, which may be what your goal or dream is.
Yeah. I think it's definitely shifted my focus of what kind of jobs I can do around acting.
Yeah.
Because my other job is still a casual teacher, and that brings in the money and lets me pay my rent. And I enjoy it. And I kind of find I enjoy it more than I ever did full time, because there's so much less paperwork and just red tape and bureaucracy around it that I can come in, teach kids, and then leave.
Yeah.
But
right, cool. Well,
there is that thing of being away from the industry. I think when you're like stuck in casual and it's like, oh, I'm using this skill now, but I found another way to still be around my people, so to speak. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I keep cutting you off.
There's a lag.
Bad podcast host. But I'm just getting really excited because you're touching on quite a few things that I really want to kind of like delve into.
Okay, let's.
And usually I kind of try to take a linear approach to my line of questioning. But you've just given me so much stuff that I want to kind of.
Sorry.
No, don't. Absolutely do not stop. This is great. So let me start off by asking you this question. What got you into acting? What was it that said to you, this is for me?
See, I always have that weird feeling with this question, because I think most people I know can pinpoint like the one point of like, I wanted to be an actor from watching this film or whatever. And I have none of that. I was like, I don't know. I think I just kind of fell into it accidentally and then just kept rolling with it.
Yeah, sure.
But I don't know. Like as a kid, I was a basketball player. Like my parents ran a basketball stadium. So I pretty much lived at a basketball stadium. And besides like doing dancing and stuff when I was little, until basketball overtook everything, I wasn't really into performing arts, but I think I kind of fell into it in high school. And I was lucky enough to have a brilliant drama teacher, because I was super shy. And I think my parents were very, very confused when I was like, I want to do drama. And it was kind of that like, okay, cool. So you want to stand in front of people in a hall and like spit, you know that's going to be required, right? So yeah, I'm going to do it. But yeah, like my drama teacher, whose name was Nicole Beaver, now Nicole Dolby, was just one of those brilliant teachers, I think, who took kids from where they were, was like, yeah, let's build from here. You don't have to be anything but who you are, and let's give you the skills to be more confident and things. So I don't know, I guess around high school when I finished, I think in my head, I always had that little thing of, I really like doing this and I'd like to do it more, but I did not have the confidence to go and do a drama course and everything, because I was like, no, I am not the best in this class. You know, so I went and did a marketing degree, because I got a really high ATAR, and I thought that that's the kind of thing that you should do. I should say my parents never really pushed it or made it feel like I couldn't do what I wanted to do. But I think just in our family, the thought of like, say, acting being a job was just something that we didn't really understand that you could do. Like my parents wouldn't know where to help me get there if I was like, hey, I'm going to be an actor. My great grandfather was a professional opera singer though. So maybe that's where it's come in back in Germany. But yeah, so then I kind of fell into community theatre through that, because I kind of, when I started doing my uni, I kind of missed that performance feeling.
Yeah.
But I still didn't have the confidence to audition for anything.
All right.
So I did a play with Glenbrook Players and signed on as a assistant stage manager, because I was like, well, I'm probably not good enough to get any role, but I can still be around it by being on a crew. And then they needed someone to die because it was Carpe Jugulum, Terry Pratchett. And they were like, oh, can you scream? And I'm like, I think so. So then I got the role of the girl who dies at the very start. And then from there, I was like, oh, I can do this. So yeah, I just kind of fell into community theatre. When I graduated uni, I worked for a company that did entertainment marketing. So I was writing the advertising copy for all of the professional musicals like Wicked, Driving Miss Daisy, not a musical, but a play, Addams Family, all of that stuff. And then I just kept doing musical theatre or community theatre. And I think it wasn't until I did a play called Gaslight, and I was the lead role in that I had the moment of, oh, maybe I am good enough to do this and actually do this properly. Because I think it was the first time that I really fought for a role, because she was meant to be, I think, 10 or 15 years older than my age. And I knew the director, who asked me to audition for like one of the supporting roles of the maid, because I played a similar role to that in another show we did together. And I remember reading the script, and it was this monologue about her losing her mind. Because if you don't know the play, it's where the concept of gaslighting came from. So the husband is making his wife think she's going crazy.
Sure.
And it was this monologue about her losing things and like, oh, I put my watch down and can't find it again. I find this over there. Like I'm going crazy, like my mother did before me. And at that time, my grandma had just been diagnosed with dementia. So we were going through all of that. And I'd had a similar conversation with her that I remember just bringing up the director and being like, I can play the lead. Like, I know this character and I know what this feels like. And I was like, I will audition for the role that you want me to, as long as you let me audition for the lead as well. Wow. And she's like, oh, okay. And that was, I think, the first time that I ever had the confidence to do that.
Yeah.
And then I got the role. And then, yeah, so it was just a very, I think, empowering experience when you kind of have one of those plays or roles.
Moments.
Yeah. And it kind of went.
How old were you at that point?
I don't even remember what year it was. 2013. I think I was married back then because I used my wedding ring in the thing. So it would have been, I think 2017.
Okay. So not
calculate. I was in my 20s. Like I was like maybe 23, 24.
Sure. So not particularly, not really a long time ago, like 2017.
No.
4 years ago. Okay. No. So it's only been the last 4 years where you've gone, yeah, okay, this is the career that I want. I can do this. I'm confident enough to do this, and this is what I want to fight for. Yeah. Okay.
So it's a pretty new push.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, for someone that it's a pretty new push. I mean, you're doing pretty amazing, right? So which is great. And obviously we'll get into that. So at that point in time when you had that aha moment, what was your goal? What was your idea of making it that you're striving towards?
I think then it was more of, I just want to do more of this. And because I'm a very high achieving human, I was like, I want to do more of this and I'm going to be good at it. So I want to like train and learn as much as I can. Okay. And then now with, I think having grown up, but like it's only been 4 years, but having the growth that I have had over that time.
You do go through growth within acting.
I also had several experiences in my personal life that kind of had me hit rock bottom and then get out of that. So I feel like with the benefit of like learning from acting and also having gone through some tough situations, I think now the idea of making it is I just want to be happy with what I'm doing, be making enough to live off, and doing it with people around me that I care about.
Amazing.
And so that's kind of where I've been driven from there. And then I think that has led me into things like getting involved in the production side and the crew side, because I'm realizing, well, I'm feeling happy doing that as well as acting. So it's helped me, I don't know, like not pigeonhole myself and being only one thing. Like I'm like, as long as I'm happy doing whatever it is and wherever God takes me, then to me, that's success.
Yeah, amazing. That's fantastic. Okay, cool. So basically, to paraphrase, making it is working in the industry and being happy with the people that you're working in the industry with, which is great. Now, obviously, you've kind of mentioned it a couple of times already that you were a teacher. So you've gone from doing a marketing degree to ending up being a teacher.
Yep. I've had lots of jobs.
Haven't we all? That is the life of an actor, really. Hundreds of different jobs. So I think when we first met, you were a full-time student, full-time teacher.
Yeah.
So how did you juggle that full-time job and your desire to make it as an actor?
With lots of sleep deprivation. Look, there was lots of creative lesson planning involved in that. I think when we met, I was doing scene on screen.
Yes.
Yeah. And then at some point, I think maybe, oh no, it was someone else. Don't worry about that. I was trying to remember who got me into scene on screen. I don't think it was you, but you were in my first class. Yeah. But I'd started there, and then I think for a couple of months I was in scene on screen, and then I did the part-time like year-long course at TAFTA, and I kind of had the realization of I want to be an actor right when I was finishing uni, like my master's degree, getting married, and I was a targeted grad for teaching. So I had a contract where it was like, you could be sent anywhere and we will place you in a school.
Right, okay.
So it was like a really inconvenient time to have that realization, which again, God's sense of humor, when I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, give me a sign. I was like, okay, cool. Yep, this is great. But yeah, from that, I think I worked my first year and I was like, no, I need to just have a first year of teaching and learning the ropes, and because it's stressful as is. But I started doing scene on screen because I think I did a casting workshop, and I was having that issue of someone coming from theatre who was very good at using my facial expressions, trying to do screen stuff. And it just wasn't quite there. Like I was looking at myself being like, oh my God, I am horrendous. And I think going back. Yeah, so even before that, from one of the plays that I did, I got invited to come onto a show called Pete Boone, which is on the community channel of Foxtel. And it's a very laid back set, kind of fun, very improv based, where like you get the script when you turn up, and then you read stuff and then you do things. So yeah, it's not super serious or high stakes acting, but it's comedy, it's very improv, it's fun. But I remember watching my episode and just being like, what the hell am I doing? I look so bad.
I mean,
And
that's such an actory thing to do
yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
I mean,
And since then,
every
he's like,
single thing I watch, I'm like, oh God, you look horrendous. How could you move your face like that? I mean,
yeah,
what are you thinking? Every single time I watch myself back.
yeah. And the director and writer of that series, David, he is so lovely. And I told him that, and he was just like, what are you like? They keep replaying your episodes. Like, you can't be that bad. Like, people like your character. And I was like, no. So then that kind of pushed me into wanting to learn more about screen acting and the differences, because I could tell just from that, like, clearly there are some techniques and stuff that differ from theatre acting. So then I did scene on screen. And then from there, I did the year-long TAFTA course. So at one point, like this is in my first year of teaching, first to second. So my first to second year of teaching, and my contract was 3 years that I had to stay at this school. So in my second, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember back. Yeah, so across like the first second, I was doing a lot of scene on screen, doing short films, cringing at my performances. And then, yeah, the TAFTA course I did was my kind of bargain with myself in terms of I had, I think, like 1 more year of my contract left where I had to be stuck at this school. Not stuck, I was enjoying it, but I couldn't like just leave the school or decide to go casual yet.
Sure. But I mean, it was the job that you were doing when you wanted to be doing something else.
Yeah, so I kind of used the year at TAFTA as, okay, I'm going to give myself this year to be doing this part-time course while I'm full-time teaching. And at the end of it, I'll decide where I want to go. Like, is this something that I should really pursue, or is it just a hobby? So I was kind of using it as that gauge. And yeah, the course went really well. So it was like 2 nights a week. So I was very, very tired. And the creative lesson planning tended to happen around, I think the course was Tuesday and Thursday nights. Mm-hmm. So on Wednesday and Friday, any work that was like independent study or investigative tasks that kids could do, generally that was on Wednesday or Fridays. Right. It was like, okay, my brain is still tired from acting. Okay, so especially in the mornings.
So from a juggling perspective, it sounds like you were more juggling the idea of study with full-time teaching as opposed to acting and teaching.
Yeah, I think that was the main thing, because mostly I did a couple of short films, but they were all being filmed on the weekends or happened to be in school holidays. So that wasn't really an issue. Or like I was doing theatre, which was in the evenings. And then it was at the end of that course that I'd kind of reached my crossroads moment of going, well, what do I do now? Because I'm really enjoying this. And that was when I kind of got the role in the feature film.
Yeah, which is the beginning of this year.
So I think it got filmed 2 years ago. It was pre-COVID. Got filmed, and then it got put on hold in terms of distribution. So yeah, that was like my moment where I was just like, what do I do? I really want to do this, but I don't know if it's the right decision. Am I even good enough to like get into the industry? And then, that's when that happened. And suddenly I was juggling life on set with teaching, and because mostly I was teaching year 11 and 12 as well. So
well, it sounds like you've definitely, I guess you've had to have that word with yourself really about what is important to me and what is it that I need to sacrifice to make my dream happen. And it sounds like you made that choice, which is I'll go casual and I'll pursue a career in the industry that I love, which is great.
But I feel like I struggle with the word sacrifice in terms of when people are like, oh, you've sacrificed a lot. Because I think, I don't know, I feel like I haven't really. I feel like the one who's sacrificing the most with regards to my decision is my husband, because he's been working full time.
Sure. But I mean,
I think,
that is a
yeah,
sacrifice, right? I mean, because ultimately, and this is something that I pretty much bring up on every
yeah,
single episode, but
I've noticed.
the reality around acting is
Yeah,
sacrifices have to be made, and
yeah,
because it is a career that for a lot of time you're not making any money, so you've got to make sacrifices, which is I'm going to forego my permanent guaranteed income job
yeah,
that I can't take time out in the middle of the day, or can't just go, okay, I'm not coming in on Monday start of term because I've got a part in a film.
yeah,
Like, so you've made a sacrifice, but also, yes, you've said your husband has had to make a sacrifice, but that's a sacrifice on your family that you've had to.
yeah.
Um,
I guess in that regard, and I think you know, um, it's been one of those things where I kind of laugh a little. I've had conversations with friends who have talked about, like, before I was getting married, they were like, oh, well, don't get married if you want to be an actor because you need the freedom.
oh no, I think get married if you want to be an actor.
Oh no, like I had someone tell me that and I was like, what are you on? Just go away.
They can make money, then you can pursue your career.
Exactly. And I was like, this has worked well. And I think I honestly wouldn't have started an acting career if it hadn't have been for my husband and his support. Because I remember being at that stage where we were getting married. I think we'd been married for a few months and I was kind of wrestling with this. I just keep feeling this calling back to acting. And my husband kind of like sat me down because I kept saying to him, I was like, you didn't marry an actor, you married a teacher. And he was like, no, I married you. I don't care what you're doing. And like we met doing musical theatre, like community musical theatre. And so he like said to me in that conversation, he was like, the difference between us is that I do musical theatre because it's fun and I'll do it around my job because he's an emergency nurse. And he was like, I get like so much fulfillment from the job that I do. And if I can fit in a show because it's one that I really like, he's like, yeah, I'll sacrifice some sleep and I'll do that show, but it's just an extra thing that I like doing. And he's like, since I've known you, I see you choosing jobs around whether or not that will let you do theatre or, act.
Yeah.
He was like, to me, that's God pushing you in that direction and saying, yeah, maybe that's where you're going to head. So yeah, I feel like if I probably hadn't have known him, I would have just kind of pushed down on that and been like, oh no, this is just a hobby. It just has to be a hobby because I am this.
Well, now it's way more than a hobby, and it's what you're working hard on.
Yeah. So, and now we're, instead of a poor teacher and a nurse, we're a nurse and an actor, which is not much better.
Well, maybe financially not much better, but I'm sure mentally and
in terms of happiness and mental, it's much better.
Way better than what space you were in before. Okay, cool. So if we get into like the acting side of things, then you've talked a lot about theatre. What's your, I guess, preference? Are you more of a theatre person or TV and film, or you don't care as long as you're acting?
I don't think I care. I think I love them both for different reasons. Like, I love screen for the challenge it is of just being yourself, and that obviously you're not just playing every character as yourself, but there is this element of like, you have to show who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of just speak in your own voice and things like that. And almost be more present because the camera picks up everything. But theatre, I absolutely love going along a journey with an audience. And I think that you just don't get that in screen. Like, you get it if you're sitting and watching the film with people, I guess, but while you're performing it, you just don't get that energy.
Yeah.
And there's just something that keeps taking me back to theatre, I think, because of that reason of it's just like, you're getting an automatic, I don't know whether automatic's the word, but like an instant response.
Instant gratification, yeah.
Yes.
Look, I can completely or kind of like agree with that whole sentiment, because I mean, I only got back into acting pretty much when we first met, seen on screen. I mean, I did a year's course at Screenwise before that, but I did short and sweet this year and last year, and
yeah,
at the time I'd only been like, right, I'm doing TV and screen. I'm only interested in screen stuff. And then I did short and sweet, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot how cool and how energizing having a live audience is on your performance, and how that really affects what you bring to your.
And it's almost like, because I did a play called Things I Know to Be True, which hands down my most favorite play that I have like ever read or done. But it was really emotional. Like, it's about a family and the issues in the family. And there's a point in I have a monologue where I am like crying and sobbing about something that's happened. And it was just that moment of, I think when we were performing it, like you can look directly into an audience member's eyes. And even when if I wasn't like, because I wasn't hysterically crying or whatever, but like there was pain from this character, and you can just see it reflected in the audience in that moment. And I was like, oh, they're with me. Like, I feel supported.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I had to do that on screen, I think I would have found it a lot harder, because there is that feeling of, with an audience, you feel like you're not alone, even when you're alone on the stage. And like, because they're watching you and they're with you.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. Okay, cool. So from there, you've obviously got an agent, which is great. How have you found I guess, breaking into the less indie scene?
Well, in another story of fantastic timing on my part, I got my agent right before COVID. So there hasn't been much luck, but I don't really think it's my agent's fault.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a push, I think. And I think like even getting an agent was a long time coming. Because I feel like, you email around, try and get an agent to look at your stuff. For me, most of my answers were like, oh, you're too old and you don't have enough credits. Kind of thing. They're like, oh, you're in your, yeah. Most of them were saying, the ones that did reply were like, you're in your late 20s and you haven't done a course, like a degree, or we'd expect to see more credits from you. So that was like the main struggle that I was having when I was.
I didn't think that we were still in those times where that would be the type of response that you would get from.
I didn't either.
That's
not everyone, but it was. I think it was about like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I wasn't going for like the top because I was like, yeah, I'm not like going for the top.
Not ideal, because we're living in a world now where, I mean, let's face it, there are parts for every age.
Yeah.
There are 100-year-old women parts. There are 50-year-old women parts. Like, how insane that is something that you would have to, just goes to show how brutal this industry is. I mean,
yeah. And it is interesting because acting coach I was doing a class with recently mentioned that at the moment he was like, the like in age group is actually, I think it was like 40s, because he was like, our population is aging, so there's more parts being written for older people. So we were talking a bit like the struggle of, being in your late 20s trying to get in, and he's like, you just got to hold on. It was just like, right now, there might not be that many things being written for your age. And I tend to have that thing where I think I finally gotten out of, I think a few years ago, I finally got out of like people wanting me to play 16-year-olds.
Okay.
But now I'm in that middle ground that a lot of times they're just like, I just don't know where to cast you, because like you're 28, but you don't look old enough to be 28 and things like that. So yeah, they were like, look, you're in a period of transition, enjoy it, learn as much as you can. If you get pulled into some of the production side of things and you're learning that way, just enjoy it and things will come.
But I guess what that has meant is you have taken things into your own hands and you've written stuff for yourself, which is amazing. So talk to me a little bit about that whole experience of writing stuff for you to perform in.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I was saying this to someone else, I think last night, that I tend to have the idea of like, okay, yeah, I'll write this script about a character that I could play that's within my casting. And then it's always my character that I'm like, yeah, I don't need to say that. She doesn't need that line. Or like, actually, we don't even need this character for the story. Like, let's do this. So I think I'm still working on the like writing things for myself.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been interesting. And it's been a good learning experience, I think, like, because even as a kid, even before I got into acting, I've always been a writer. Back then it was like short stories and things like that. But yeah, so I'm kind of like enjoying falling back into that world. And yeah, like we're in early pre-production for a short film that I've written about my grandmother and her dementia and things like that, which is interesting because I think especially with script writing, I've found like it's just really interesting the amount of changes a script will go through. Because I think this script in particular, I originally wrote as a short and sweet, like a short and sweet play for me and one of my friends, and he was going to play the nurse because he wanted to do some theatre, and we were like, oh yeah, we could add some comic relief into this. It can be set in a nursing home with like me, an older woman, and you as like one of the staff members. And then from that it turned into, okay, let's do a short film about it, because with COVID the short and sweet got cancelled. Like it made it into it, but then it got cancelled. And then it kind of morphed into someone was like, oh, you should, if it's in a nursing home, you should bring in like young kids. And then it's like the difference between old and young and that. So we kind of did that. And then I worked as a chaperone and went, no, I'm not bringing in a class of like 27-year-old children. Like that's too hard to deal with. Yeah. So then I went back to, okay, let's change it up. And I think we set it in the house and it was just her and the girl and then like one other character that came in. And then we kind of had that in a thing of like, yep, this is good. And then it was, I think the film The Father came out and we were just like, yeah, okay, this now just looks like a fan film from The Father, because it had a few similarities in terms of it, which I think is something to say. Something like dementia that a lot of people have dealings with, there are lots of common ground. But then it became like a thing where one of my friends read it and she was like, I love this. And then we started talking and she pointed out things from when I was talking about like my experiences with my grandmother and kind of on my wedding day, the doctors, like my dad wanted her to come to the wedding and the doctors were pretty much like, she won't be able to deal with it because it'll be too many new people and she'll feel really overwhelmed. So we advise that you don't take her to the wedding. So we had a great photographer who came with us the day after where we all dressed up. So I was still in my wedding dress and everything, and we went and took photos with her, but she had no idea who I was. So we were talking about kind of that experience, and this friend was like, that's your story. So it's kind of, this script has taken lots of twists and turns to kind of get to where we were like, yeah, okay, this is the story we want to tell. So I think it's a lot of exploration when you're writing about I'm finding like, what's the story you want to tell? What message do you want to leave someone in the audience with when it finishes? And that's kind of been the journey, and probably why I am so ruthless in terms of cutting lines from all the characters, because I've started trying to approach scripts in that way of what's the story first, and then why is this film being written now? And then that will generally create the script and the characters in itself.
Do you still have the as much of a desire to act now that you've kind of discovered that script writing and development side of film?
I don't know. I think this is probably my crossroads moment right now that's happening in my life, where I'm like, because I love acting, but I also love writing. And it's kind of that thing where I think I've kind of shifted in thinking of myself as an actor to a storyteller. And I feel like, I think the gift that writing and getting involved in the development process of films and even working on crew is realizing that I can act, but I don't have to play every character. Like, kind of that thing where it's, because I feel like when I was just thinking of myself as an actor, I'm like, oh, I need to be in everything. I need to like get in as many scripts as I can, and in as many projects. And it's kind of that feeling where I think when I started writing, I was like, well, I can tell stories that are meaningful and purposeful and important, but I don't have to be in everything.
Yeah, wow.
And I can still feel that creative energy. And then when I come across a script or a character that I really love, and whether it's something I'm writing or someone else's, and I look at that script, I'm like, I understand this person, then that's generally my push of, okay, I need to act in this.
Sure.
So yeah.
Learning to go on, hey, from being in drama at high school and then going through that push to get into acting and then changing to now be like, okay, well, maybe I'm more of a storyteller than an actor, but it's all still within the same realm, right? So I can imagine I was going to say, like, the mental hurdles that must kind of bring up for you just as a person to try and decide what is about, because it would challenge your own thought processes and your own of what your trajectory is.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways, I think my trajectory has challenged other people than me. Like, because I think I was lucky enough that my two parents are people that have had several jobs in their life. My dad, when he was younger, like worked in stamps, and then he worked in store management. And then when we were born, he became a courier for TNT. So that's been his life for pretty much as long as I can remember being a courier. But I've known he's had other jobs, and he's talked to me about it and what made him decide to change. And my mum as well was a nurse. She got injured nursing, so then became like a family daycare carer, and then a stadium administrator. And now she's like in orthodontics. And that's how I got my first job and learned to be a chairside assistant in orthodontics as a 16-year-old. But I've kind of, I think, been around people that weren't afraid to reinvent themselves if what they were doing wasn't suiting like where they wanted their life to be, or wasn't suiting their circumstances at that moment. So I think as much as I've said, like, my parents probably didn't know what exactly to do to support in terms of acting, and it's been a learning experience of them asking questions of like, oh, okay, what are your plans? Don't you want to be on like TV or things? I'm like, well, yes, I would love to. But in that regard, they've always, I think, kind of been that example to me and my brother of you can't be afraid to take a step in a different direction.
Yeah.
And so I've kind of felt myself being at a crossroads, being like, okay, maybe this is a moment that I have to make a decision. But I've never felt too much stress about, oh no, this is not my direction. I've always been really driven. So once I have an idea and I think about it a lot, and I kind of like do a pros and cons list and like all of that stuff. But once I've put in that thinking, I'm like, okay, this is where I'm going.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have you I mean, you kind of said that it's only been the kind of the last 4 years that you've had that push. Obviously all actors go through quite a lot mentally and through mental health, etc., around decisions that they're making, or rejection, or maybe not being where they want to be by the time they want to be there. How do you cope or manage with those type of situations?
I feel like it's not exactly fashionable to say in our industry, but I think for me it's always been about my faith. And so like I'm a Christian, I believe in God, and for me that's the thing that's always kept me grounded, because I've always had, I think, that comfort of knowing that, yeah, things may not always go my way, but feeling like, well, God has a plan for me and he's pushed me in this direction. And I think recently, like I was really struggling during COVID. And I had a few days where I could barely get out of bed because I had a few jobs as like an onset tutor and things, and then everything just finished at the same time. And I had like 2 weeks of absolutely nothing. But yeah, I listened to a podcast of some pastor that was talking about stuff. And he mentioned in that like God gives you a calling, and that's what's in your heart. And that's the thing that you can't get rid of. And so I've always resonated with that idea of, I feel like acting or storytelling is my calling, that no matter what I do and how I try and push it away, it just keeps bringing me back.
Yeah.
But he was like, just because you have a calling doesn't mean you're ready for it right now. Okay. And so that's kind of the kind of thought that I've always kind of held onto of, okay, I might sit there and go, well, I want a lead role in that. I want this role. But who's to say I'm ready for it? In that you do your best at that time.
Yeah.
But I feel like God's always working within me and building me up so that I'm ready for, like, to reach that stage when I'm ready for it. And not necessarily when I want it.
Sure. So how do you then keep yourself kind of motivated to keep pushing? Because I mean, like, it's really, I guess, an interesting, I don't want this to sound disrespectful, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
An interesting concept of maybe you're ready, but it's not your time, and that's a path.
Yeah.
How would you then, I guess, how do you keep motivated? Because even though it may not be your time, that doesn't change your want and your desire to do it. And if your time, like if you're being told by some acting coaches the roles now being written for people in their 40s because we're an aging population, and you're a decade away from being in your 40s, how are you keeping yourself motivated to get to your 40s? I mean, what happens if you get to your 40s and all the parts of people
now they've moved up to 60s
because the population is even older than what it was 10 years ago?
I think that's a really good question. And I think it's that thing of, okay, I'm just thinking of how to word it, sorry. Like, I may not be ready now, but like there's no wasted time, I think, if you're taking the time to prepare and get better, in terms of there are seasons to everything. And sometimes things will be really busy and sometimes there'll be nothing. But if you're using that downtime to actually improve on yourself or go, okay, for whatever reason, whether like I believe it's God, but whether you believe it's the universe or whatever, now it's a season of waiting. But if I'm using that to go, okay, well, I'm going to use this season of where I don't seem to be getting many acting jobs to actually improve myself, and I'm going to improve in that skill, then that's where I feel like the growth happens in terms of, yeah.
I think that's a really smart way to kind of approach it, and probably a really beautiful sentiment to end this podcast on, actually, for people to just keep preparing, keep working, and when it's time, it'll be time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No, well, thank you very much for talking to me about your journey and your story, and where, if anybody wants to follow you or see any of your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably just follow on social media. So my Instagram is at Kate Jirelle, or my website is www.katejirelle.com. And usually that's where I keep everyone updated on what I'm doing and plays that are coming out and things like that.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me, and
Thanks so much for having me.
Seeing what you do and what time has for you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.